Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review. And today from McFarlane Toys in their DC Multiverse line, we have the Justice League 2021 Batman. So this version of Batman is how we see him in the Justice League movie. I believe this action figure was released roughly around the same time or shortly thereafter when HBO Max released the updated Zack Snyder cut version of the Justice League film. It's a great looking action figure, and I don't know, I'm kind of stoked on it. It's kind of odd because on the back of the box we have, the Ben Affleck Batman, but in his standard Batman costume, whereas here we have Batman in his tactical armor, and this is what he wears towards the end of the film during the big giant battle. So yeah, I'm a little bit late to the party on this review. I kind of held off on buying these figures when they first came out. Initially, I was really excited when they first announced the line. But there were kind of two things kind of holding me back. For one, the Jason Momoa Aquaman, in my opinion, looked terrible. And number two, Superman was in the black uniform, which is appropriate to the Snyderverse, version of Superman in the updated Justice League director's cut of the film. But I really just wanted Superman in his iconic colors. And I didn't realize it until much later that they actually did release the blue, red, and gold Superman in his standard colors, but it was a Target exclusive. I just never saw it in the wild. But after amassing some of these figures, gradually over the last few months, I decided to pull the trigger and just get the rest of the Justice League that I was missing. So today we're going to take a look at Batman. Alright, so we get the trading card up here, and you also get the display base. Alright, so first impressions of the action figure while it's still in the plastic tray. Alright, so immediately when I saw this design of Batman in the film, and also as I'm holding this action figure, it really does remind me of the character Night Owl from Zack Snyder's take on Watchmen. If you're a comic book fan, you'll remember Watchmen is the very celebrated comic book graphic novel written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Dave Gibbons. Many years ago, Zack Snyder adapted it to the to cinema, and one of the characters played by Patrick Wilson, Night Owl, he kind of resembles Batman. And in many ways, it's kind of Alan Moore's take on the Batman character. And what kind of reminds me of Night Owl is, not only the fact that, he has a cape and is wearing a similar costume, but more specifically the goggles. It's kind of very reminiscent of that character. It's also very reminiscent of the Earth 2 Batman, from the alternate reality, and that's Owlman. So a lot of owls and bats in comic books. The cape is actually pretty cool. After I just kind of flip this over, I'm kind of handling it, and it always surprises me how there's never a consistency with the capes in the McFarlane line. Like this one, it's a thin material and it's very, very flexible, which is really surprising me because this is an older action figure. This came out back in 2021, and more recently I reviewed the Ocean Master figure, from a few months ago. And that cape, even though it's almost as thin as this one, it's not as flexible. So I'm always kind of surprised that the capes, they're not consistent across the board. Like for me, this is kind of like the ideal material and flexibility and thinness of a cape I'd like to see on the action figures. It's not too heavy. It's not too thick, and it's just, for lack of a better term, it's just really soft, which kind of surprises me. Batman also comes with his Batarang right there. And let's take him out. Alright, so we have the Ben Affleck Batman as seen in the Justice League live-action film. So this is not Batman's standard armor that we're accustomed to. This is kind of like his tactical armor that we see towards the end of the film during the giant battle against Darkseid. And right now I'm just trying to adjust his waist because mine's kind of... My waist here, as you can see, it's a little bit crooked, and I'm trying to like get it back into like its neutral position. And apparently the quality control isn't the greatest. The leg just kind of fell off. Maybe that'll help me figure out what's wrong with the waist. Just give me a minute here. Let me try to see if I can see what's wrong. I think the joint... Alright, so the way the waist is attached here, it's actually a ball socket mechanism. So the lower abdomen torso piece is actually the socket. And then here in the pelvic area, this is the mechanism that kind of holds the hips and the legs and attaches underneath. It's actually a ball socket. And mine's kind of tight. It doesn't want to like really move around or shift. So that's kind of unfortunate. So I'm going to try to recenter the waist and the pelvis. But mine's like crooked right now, and I can't get it back in its neutral position. It's a little bit stiff. Alright, I think that should do it. One thing that worries me also is that the rubber piece here for his briefs that go over, it's very thin in this area. And my worry is if you handle this too roughly, or if this gets dry rot over time, that this might crack or rip. For example, I think, Jesus, all right, I was gonna compare it to this figure here, but this one here was broken also. I bought this one broken. I never realized it until I got home. But I was gonna compare the piece here with this one, but this one's even thinner than that. So, all right, we'll set this guy off to the side, fix him later. Alright, so far this this review is turning out to be a mess. Alright, so let's get Batman back together. He's kind of like Humpty Dumpty. So if you've never taken apart a McFarlane figure, it's pretty simple. Just plug and play pretty much. Man, this is tight. Give me a second here. This does not want to... I've had this happen before with some figures where they weren't assembled correctly in the factory and the leg would just come off. Shoot. This is not working for me. Just wait. Alright, there you go. It took a little bit of elbow grease, but I think I got the leg back in place. So I don't think that the leg was assembled correctly at the manufacturing plant. It was like only put halfway through into the socket. This guy is so stiff. At least my figure is stiff. He doesn't want to arch forward either. Like, he has a joint here, but mine's constantly like arching back. And every time I try to lean him forward, he hits his abdomen muscles right there. So that's kind of disappointing. My figure just constantly just wants to like arch his back like this. I can't get him into like a neutral position. which is a shame because it's a really nicely sculpted figure. It looks great. Alright, so I think I have it back in place. Alright, so I apologize about that. So this dude stands in at about under 7.5 inches. And for size comparison, let's bring out this guy again. This is like one of the older McFarlane figures. So I've said this in previous videos, but some of the McFarlane figures from like, 2 years ago, they were a lot, not that they were a lot larger, but they were definitely a little bit bigger than the newer figures. As you can see here, definitely huge size difference. This is supposed to be, I think, a 7-inch scale action figure line, which equates to, I think, 1/10. 1/12 figures are 6-inch figures, 1/6 scale figures are 12-inch figures, and I think 1/10 is about 7-inch. So as you can see, the scale between the figures, the size is a lot different. That's like an inconsistency across the board with McFarlane figures, but I think over the last year, they've been trying to make improvements to try to put everything into like better scale. Beautiful head sculpt. I love the goggles. Like the cape. He has the much larger Batman chest emblem, which is reminiscent of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. And as you can see, it's a very different, unconventional armor for Batman. It's like heavy tactical armor. Some of the straps look kind of like very random. There's his utility belt. It's all black. So his costume's predominantly like a dark black and kind of like silver and gunmetal. The cape is really nice, beautiful texture on it. There is another version of this figure that's out there. There's one that actually comes without the mask, so you can kind of see. It's kind of like in the likeness of actor Ben Affleck, but the likeness isn't that spot on. McFarlane, it's really hit or miss in terms of likeness when it comes to like actors. I'm also noticing that this head is a slightly deeper shade of black than the rest of his cowl. So there is a little bit of disconnect in terms of color right there. I like the shade of silver they're using. It's nice. There could be, in my opinion, a little bit more contrast, or maybe using a deeper shade of black for the body armor. In terms of articulation, Batman's head rotates left and right. Does he look down? Only about there. Does he look up? He looks up about like that. His arms rotate. He has that ball-socketed butterfly joint on the inside it allows for a little bit more range of motion. He has a bicep cut right there. Double pinned elbows. Now the fins here, wow, these are really soft. So the fins on his gauntlets, they're just like really soft, and they're very short too, which is kind of disappointing. Unless this is how it is in the movie. Standard wrist articulation. Like I pointed out earlier, he has a cut beneath the chest line, and mine, it's kind of weird. It's not as snug as I'd want, and it always just kind of like retracts more towards the back. I can't lean him straight up and down. He always wants to just like lean back. At least on my copy of the figure. And when I want to crunch him forward, he doesn't want to crunch forward at all. So he does have a waist swivel. Mine's a little bit tight, but I think with enough elbow grease, you can loosen it up. His legs kick up about there, and they kick outward. God, this is horrible. This leg does not want to stay put, which is unfortunate for me. All right, we'll come back to that later. So we're just gonna like review him with one leg. He has double pin knees. and standard ankle and toe articulation like most McFarlane figures. So let's get this leg back on. And if you're wondering what this is, I have a desk lamp here, and this is a tool that came with my desk lamp, because I can adjust the angle of my lamp using this. I'm just trying to like get the joint back in place properly. Yeah, so for whatever reason, my hip joint doesn't want to. It doesn't want to like stay put. It just keeps on falling out, which sucks because this is a really nice figure. I'm just kind of upset with the fact that my figure is a little bit defective. So overall, it's a really, really nice interpretation of Batman. If you're a fan of the Zack Snyder live-action film, this is a must-get in my opinion. You know, if you're looking to get the Ben Affleck figure in his like standard costume at this scale, I think there's a company called Beast Kingdom. They make a live-action Ben Affleck Batman in his standard Batman uniform. But I think that's a pretty pricey figure. I want to say it might run anywhere between, I think, $60 to $80, I think. They also make a Superman in that collection. And just give me a second. Alright, so what we have here, this is the Ben Affleck Batman, also from the Zack Snyder films, but this is produced by Mattel. This came out years ago, but this is kind of like the costume I kind of want to see McFarlane do. You know, do the standard Affleck Batman outfit that's not the tactical armor. This figure's, you know, it's pretty dated by now. It's not the most amazing thing to look at anymore. Back in the day, it's pretty cool, but, you know, it hasn't aged all that well. You know, it doesn't have the same engineering as like a modern figure. You know, it only has like single pinned elbows and knees. And the sculpting's a little bit on the softer side. But this is the kind of costume I want McFarlane to take on next instead of, you know, this guy here. Like, this is great, but, you know, this is the costume I kind of associate Batman with in the Snyder films. And Mattel, they also did their take on this armor also. Here's one of the versions. This was from their budget Justice League line of action figures. Same costume, you know, still Batman in his tactical armor. But as you can see, it's very simplified and dumbed down, but it has a lot of the similar elements. You know, it's just kind of interpreted just a little bit differently. And it's a much smaller figure. So the DC Classics, DC Universe line of action figures, this was a 1/12 scale, 6-inch scale action figure, you know, and here's it against the McFarlane one. And you can see the size difference here. So it's just amazing how far action figure engineering's come over the last, you know, or how it's evolved over the last, you know, maybe like 20 years. It's really something. And I can only imagine, you know, where we'll be, you know, 2 years from now. Especially at this price point. You know, you're paying like $19 for a McFarlane figure, and you're getting something like this. It's insane. You know, like 6 years ago, you're paying the same amount of money for this guy here. And, you know, the amount of advancements in action figure engineering is just astounding. You know, we're getting such cleaner, more realistic sculpts. The articulation is vastly improving. The quality of the materials is always evolving. So it's just really cool. Right, so we have our little Batman family here. So let's wrap this one up. But before we do, how do I rate this guy on a scale of 1 to 10? All right, so despite the fact that my figure was a little bit defective, I'm going to look past that and say this guy is a solid 8 to an 8.5. Is he something that you need to add to your collection? If you're a Batman fan, I'm going to say yes. If you're trying to amass a collection of McFarlane DC superheroes who are kind of like pulled from the live action TV shows and movies, I'm going to say yes. So, you know, I think overall, it's worth the purchase, and for me, at least, it's a must-get. I think he looks awesome. So I think that pretty much sums it up. So I apologize. This was kind of a weirder review. I didn't realize. I kind of got like it kind of threw me off when this guy's leg just kept on falling off. So I'm kind of like, I don't know, jarred a little. So I wasn't as focused on, like, having a straightforward review as usual. So let's wrap this up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. All right, later.